The road was a ribbon of cracked asphalt winding through endless fields of dry grass. Gabriel's motorcycle roared against the silence, the only sound for miles under the bruised sweep of twilight. A battered map fluttered in his jacket pocket. Useless now, the last signpost he'd passed was rusted and blank, eaten away by time. He hadn't meant to take this road, a wrong turn, a stubborn sense of adventure, and here he was, lost, low on gas and chasing the sinking sun into nowhere. In the distance, shapes coalesced. Faint at first, like ghosts half remembered, then clearer. Houses, a steeple, rows of buildings pressed close like whispering conspirators. Relief flooded Gabriel's chest. A town. He rolled into it on fumes, the motorcycle's engine coughing, dying, as he coasted to a stop on the main street. The town seemed untouched by time, weathered wooden storefronts, iron lampposts, cobbled sidewalks. A soft mist clung low to the ground, veiling the town's edges like a secret. No sound greeted him. Not a murmur of conversation, not a bark, not even the clang of distant industry. The town was utterly, unnervingly silent. Gabriel dismounted, his boots crunching on loose gravel. He called out, feeling silly. "Hey, anyone around?" The words cracked the silence like a gunshot. Curtains twitched in nearby windows. He glimpsed faces, pale, wide-eyed, vanishing into shadow. An icy prickle ran up his spine. "Sorry," he muttered, voice low, somehow certain that the sound itself was offensive here. He pushed open the door of a building marked Tavern, half expecting it to be abandoned. Instead, the room was filled with people sitting at tables, drinking. From chipped mugs, eating simple meals, they all looked up as one, their eyes fixing on him with naked alarm. A woman behind the counter scribbled furiously on a pad of paper and held it up. No speaking. "Right," Gabriel blinked. Sorry, The woman paled, dropping the pad. A man near the window flinched violently, as if struck. A child whimpered. His mother clamped a hand over his mouth. Gabriel raised both hands in apology. He reached for the nearest pen and scrap of paper on the counter, scrawling. "Why?" the woman exhaled shakily, her shoulders relaxing slightly. She wrote back, her handwriting, tight and spidery, "For your safety, for ours. Please." Another woman appeared at Gabriel's side, pressing a brass key into his palm. Her smile was strained, eyes pleading. Around her neck hung a locket that rattled softly when she moved. "Room is
upstairs. Stay quiet. Night comes soon." Gabriel hesitated, sensing an urgency beyond mere hospitality. He nodded mutely, pocketed the key, and mounted the narrow stairs to a small room with a bed, a chair, and a single, cracked mirror. From the window, the town stretched. Outward, a labyrinth of narrow streets and shuttered homes. Lamps flickered to life, throwing long shadows against the mist. And still, no sound. Gabriel lay on the bed, staring at the ceiling as dusk deepened into true night. His throat itched with unspoken questions. What was this place? Why the silence? He thought about leaving, but the motorcycle was out of gas. Even if it weren't, riding blind into the dark fields would be suicide. He had no choice but to stay till morning. The town seemed to hold its breath outside his window. Something moved in the darkness, something vast, slow and heavy. Gabriel sat bolt upright, heart hammering. From the floor below came a soft tap, 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 someone knocking lightly at his door. He crossed the room and opened it a crack. The innkeeper stood there, trembling, her hands shaking as she thrust another note into his hands. "Do not speak." Even a whisper. "It wakes beneath
Beneath, Gabriel tried to ask silently with his eyes, but she only pressed a finger to her lips and fled down the stairs. He closed the door, bolting it, his skin crawling. Lying back on the bed, he strained his ears but heard nothing beyond the creak
of settling wood. No wind, no insects, no life. Only the terrible, oppressive silence, and beneath it, a sensation.
like a low vibration felt in bone and blood rather than heard. A sleeping presence, massive, ancient, malignant. Gabriel curled on the bed, pulling the thin blanket over himself like a shield. His mind whirled with fears he dared not voice. Eventually, exhaustion claimed him. But even in sleep, the town's silence pressed into his dreams, and he awoke gasping just before dawn, when the mists were thickest and the streets outside shivered with the footsteps of things unseen. When morning came, it brought no comfort. The mist had thickened, a heavy, milky shroud that clung to every surface, muffling what little light filtered through the overcast sky. Gabriel cracked the window open, half hoping to hear birdsong or the hum of life returning with the day. Nothing. Only the hiss of mist sliding across stone and wood, whispering against the eaves like unseen fingers. He dressed quickly, slinging his backpack over one shoulder. He'd refill the bike somehow, find someone brave enough to explain what was happening. Downstairs, the tavern was nearly empty. A few figures hunched over cups of dark liquid that smelled bitter and burned. They didn't look up as Gabriel descended the stairs. The innkeeper approached, slipping him a folded note. Her hands were raw, cracked from cold and fear. "Leave if you must. Quickly. No talking, no noise, no questions." He wrote back, frustration tightening his hand. "How do I leave? Gas?" She bit her lip until it turned white. Then she drew a crude map. 3 turns. A right at the old fountain. A road that slashed through the woods. Go fast, no stops, no sound. Gabriel tucked the map into his jacket. He scribbled one last message. "What happens if I speak?" The woman hesitated. Tears welled in her eyes. She shook her head and fled, disappearing into the kitchen without answering. Gabriel clenched his fists, swallowing the urge to curse aloud. He forced himself into the street, his breath steaming in the cold morning air. The town watched him from behind curtained windows. Boots tapping lightly, he made his way to the gas station, an old, skeletal thing with a single pump sagging under the weight of years. A tattered sign hung above it, "No service after dusk." The pump was manual. He turned the rusted handle, prayed, and felt the clunk and churn of machinery waking reluctantly. Fuel dripped into the motorcycle's tank, slow and uneven. As he worked, something shifted at the edge of his vision. He froze. Across the street, a woman stood utterly still, a child clinging to her skirt. Both stared at him, their faces pale blurs behind the mist. Their mouths moved soundlessly, shaping words without breathing life into them. Gabriel's heart pounded. He finished fueling, slapped the cap closed, and wheeled the bike onto the road. He mounted, kicked the starter, and the engine coughed, then roared to life, breaking the silence like a shattering pane of glass. The woman and child vanished into the mist. Gabriel gunned the engine and shot forward, following the innkeeper's map. Left, right, past the fountain where a dry, cracked angel wept stone tears. He raced toward the tree line, mist tearing around him in ghostly ribbons. Then, deep beneath the town, a sound, not heard but felt. A vast grinding groan, like ancient stones stirring after endless sleep. Gabriel's blood turned to ice. In the rearview mirror, the mist writhed and coiled, pulling itself into grotesque shapes. Shadows larger than buildings stretched and twisted. Something was waking, something old, something furious. Gabriel leaned low over the handlebars, heart hammering in his chest. The mist seemed to chase him now, thickening into tendrils that clawed at the tires, the road, the air itself. He burst through the last veil of fog and into the woods. For a breathless moment, the trees swallowed the road, darkness pressing close, no mist here. Only the damp, earthy smell of rot and wet leaves. Gabriel risked a glance back. The mist boiled against the tree line, unable or unwilling to cross. He let out a shaky breath, barely suppressing a whoop of relief. He was free. Whatever curse held, the town, it hadn't followed him yet. The road narrowed, the trees thickening. Twists and turns made visibility poor. He slowed, wary. That's when he saw it. Standing in the middle of the road, a figure, tall, thin, shrouded in a ragged cloak. Gabriel swerved, nearly skidding out, but caught himself. He skidded to a stop several yards away, engine growling. The figure didn't move for a moment. Neither did Gabriel. Then the figure lifted an arm and beckoned. A clear, unmistakable gesture. "Come!" Gabriel's instinct screamed at him to turn, to flee. Instead, as if drawn by a gravity older than reason, he killed the engine and dismounted. His boots crunched on gravel as he approached. Closer now, he saw the figure wore a mask, an old, cracked thing of porcelain painted with strange glyphs. The figure thrust a hand forward, revealing a piece of parchment. Shaking, Gabriel took it, scrawled,
"In spidery ink, you spoke, you woke it. It will not stop.
Return to silence or be devoured." Gabriel's hands trembled. "I didn't know," he whispered, the words barely slipping past his lips. The figure recoiled as if burned. The mist thickened behind Gabriel, whispering with 1,000 unseen mouths. The figure dropped another scrap of parchment, turned, and vanished into the trees. Gabriel snatched up the paper. One word, written in a different hand. "Run." Gabriel didn't think. He ran. Branches whipped at his face and arms, the forest a blur of shadow and motion around him. His breath tore in and out of his lungs, loud in his ears, but he dared not make a sound, not a cry, not a curse, not even a gasp. The mist thickened behind him, oozing between the trees like living smoke. Shapes formed within it, long-limbed things that didn't walk so much as glide, their heads cocked at unnatural angles. The road twisted, a pale ribbon barely visible.
Underfoot, he stumbled, nearly falling.
Something brushed his ankle, wet, cold as a corpse's hand. Gabriel lunged forward, regaining his footing. Ahead, the trees thinned. Sunlight, weak and grey, filtered through. A way out. Heart hammering, legs burning, he sprinted for the clearing, bursting. Through the last clutch of trees, he skidded to a halt. A small bridge arched over a black, sluggish river. On the other side, a dirt road wound upward into craggy hills. No sign of another town, no cars, no people, just empty land. Behind him, the mist heaved and twisted, shuddering against some unseen barrier at the forest's edge. Gabriel didn't hesitate. He raced across the bridge, boots thudding against the damp wood. Halfway across, the boards groaned. Deep, shuddering sounds, like the bridge itself, protested his passage. And beneath that, another vibration. Lower, hungrier. He risked a glance. Down. Beneath the bridge, something shifted in the dark water. a massive shape, half seen, covered in scales or stone, or both. An eye, vast and lidless, opened and fixed on him. Gabriel sprinted the last few steps and threw himself onto solid ground. The eye watched him. The river boiled as the thing stirred. He forced himself to his feet and ran up the dirt road, not daring to look back until the river and the bridge were distant memories. Only then did he slow, gasping, doubling over with exhaustion. For the first time since entering the town, he allowed himself a sound, a low, broken sob. He should have known. He should have turned back the moment he saw the empty windows, the silent faces. But he hadn't. And now he had awakened something that had slept for ages. He straightened, wiping his face. No time for guilt. He needed to find help. Answers. Anything ahead. The dirt road curved around a rocky outcrop, disappearing from sight. Gabriel walked toward it, every nerve on edge. As he rounded the bend, his breath caught. There, nestled against the hills like a wound in the land, was another town, smaller than the first, even older. Crumbling buildings leaned drunkenly against one another. Fields of dead crops stretched into the horizon. A few figures moved through the streets, slow and shambling. Gabriel's heart sank. This was no sanctuary. It was a grave. Still, he had no choice. Steeling himself, he approached. As he entered the outskirts, a figure stumbled toward him. A man, gaunt and hollow-eyed, dressed in rags. His lips moved rapidly, forming silent words. Gabriel stepped back instinctively. The man reached for him, shoving a scrap of paper into his chest before collapsing to his knees. Gabriel unfolded it with trembling.
Fingers, no voice, no voice, no voice. The man wept soundlessly, mouth open in a silent scream. Gabriel backed away. The town loomed around him, buildings sagging under the weight of decay. Windows stared like empty eyes. A crow, silent and still, perched atop a broken fence.
Its feathers dusted with ash. Above it all, the mist gathered, thicker and blacker than before, swirling into a vortex over the town's center. Gabriel swallowed hard. Something was coming. He turned to flee, only to find the road behind him swallowed by the mist. No way back, no way but forward. He gritted his teeth and moved deeper into the dead town. At the center, he found a square. A dried-up fountain stood in the middle, its basin cracked and empty. Around it, people knelt in silent prayer, their faces hidden behind crude masks made of wood and bone. As Gabriel watched, one of the kneeling figures twitched violently, then fell backward. The mask slipped free, revealing a hollowed-out face, not just dead, emptied, devoured from within. The mist above the fountain thickened, churning like a storm cloud, and from its depths a shape began to descend. Gabriel stumbled backward, heart slamming against his ribs. The thing emerging from the mist was vast, taller than any building, its body a shifting mass of tendrils, mouths, and grasping hands. Eyes opened and closed across its surface, each one dripping black ichor. It was awake, it was hungry, and it knew him. A low vibration filled the air, rattling Gabriel's bones. The creature's many mouths moved, shaping a single, terrible word, not spoken aloud, formed directly in his mind. "Speak!" Gabriel clamped his hands over his mouth, shaking his head violently. The thing surged forward, tendrils reaching. Without thinking, he turned and ran, weaving through the broken streets. A voice
inside him screamed to call for help, to shout, to scream. But he knew with the certainty of death, that if he spoke,
he would be lost. Ahead, a narrow alley beckoned. He dove into it, heart pounding, breath burning in his chest. Behind him, the creature's bulk shattered buildings like rotten wood, tendrils slashing through the air. Gabriel pressed himself against a crumbling wall, forcing his body into the smallest space possible. The creature paused, many heads turning, sniffing the air. The vibration deepened. Gabriel's vision blurred. His muscles trembled with the effort of remaining silent. A tendril snaked past him, so close he could feel the cold radiating off it. He squeezed his eyes shut, praying, not to any god he knew, but to the silence itself. After a moment that stretched into eternity, the tendril withdrew. The creature moved on, searching elsewhere. Gabriel sagged against the wall, tears streaming down his face. He couldn't survive much longer, not without help, not without answers, but he couldn't speak. Not here. Not
ever again.
Gabriel stumbled through the broken town, legs weak, lungs aching. The mist thinned slightly here, curling low along the ground like smoke from a dying fire. The creature's presence faded into the distance, hunting elsewhere for now. Gabriel pressed forward, keeping to the shadows. His instincts screamed that any noise, any movement out of place would draw it back. He passed abandoned homes with boarded windows, shattered doors swinging loosely on their hinges. The place reeked of mold, rot, and something fouler, an ancient, coppery scent that clung to the back of his throat. Ahead, a narrow building tilted against a leaning bell tower. Above its door, a faded sign hung by one chain, creaking slightly. Library? Gabriel didn't think. He ducked inside, pulling the door shut behind him with infinite care. The air inside was heavy, almost tangible with the smell of old paper and damp stone. Dust motes floated in dim shafts of light from cracked windows. For a moment, it seemed empty. Then movement. From behind a sagging counter, an ancient woman rose. She was impossibly thin, her skin stretched parchment-like over fragile bones. Her white hair hung in thin, uneven strands. Round spectacles magnified her pale, unblinking eyes. She regarded Gabriel for a long moment, then slowly raised a finger to her lips. Silence. Gabriel nodded, his throat dry. The woman shuffled around the counter, her steps soundless on the cracked tile. She motioned for him to follow. They wound through narrow aisles of collapsing bookshelves. Gabriel's heart hammered in his ears. Every creak of wood, every flutter of brittle pages felt deafening. Finally, they reached a back room. Here, the shelves were intact. Lanterns burned low, casting a golden glow. A battered desk sat against one wall, covered in scraps of parchment, inkpots, and ancient tomes. The woman gestured to a chair. Gabriel sat, exhausted. She produced a fresh sheet of paper and dipped a quill into ink, writing in a hand so precise it could have been etched. She slid the page to him. You are not the first to awaken it. You may not be the last, but few survive. To seek answers. Gabriel took the quill with shaking fingers. What is it? She nodded grimly and wrote, It is the hunger beneath, born before language, before memory. It sleeps beneath the silent town. Gabriel frowned, scrawling. Why silence? The woman's lips trembled. Her hand shook as she wrote. Sound gives it form. Voice gives it strength. Speech binds you to it. Gabriel sat back, stunned. All this time, words, music, laughter, everything that made life human here, it was forbidden. A terrible realization struck him. I spoke. he wrote. The woman's face collapsed into sorrow. She reached across the desk and squeezed his hand with surprising strength. "You have little time." Gabriel fought the rising tide of panic. "How do I stop it?" The woman hesitated. Her eyes flickered toward a heavy tome on a nearby shelf. Bound in cracked leather, it bore no title. She pulled it down, opened it to a marked page, and turned it toward him. A crude map, the silent town at its center. Around it, strange symbols. Circles within circles. Lines that formed impossible angles. At the heart, a black spiral. She wrote, "Return to the center, find the mouth, seal it before the hunger fully rises." Gabriel swallowed hard. Return. To that cursed fountain where the mist coiled and the townsfolk knelt. Back into the heart of the nightmare. He scribbled, "How?"
"I can't fight that thing." The woman smiled sadly. She produced a small bundle wrapped in red cloth. Inside lay a stone, smooth, grey, and warm to the touch. Strange symbols shimmered across its surface. This was made long ago by those who first
silenced the town. It binds sound. It can buy you moments, nothing more. Gabriel cradled the stone in both hands. It thrummed faintly, like a heartbeat. Moments. Maybe that would be enough. He stood. The woman pressed another note into his palm. "Remember."
"No words?"
"No cries. No names. Not even in your mind." Gabriel nodded. She smiled, a fleeting, sorrowful thing, and turned back to her desk. As Gabriel stepped into the threshold of the library once more, he glanced back. The woman raised a hand in farewell. Already, the mist was thickening outside. Already, the ground trembled with the creature's approaching rage. Gabriel slipped the stone into his pocket, drew a long, steadying breath, and plunged into the mist. Back toward the silent town. Back toward the mouth, back toward whatever end awaited him. The mist devoured the world. Gabriel moved through it like a blind man, one hand brushing against broken walls and toppled lampposts to guide his way. The binding stone pulsed in his pocket, a steady rhythm against the chaos outside. Each pulse kept the thing at bay, but only barely. Every few steps the ground trembled beneath his feet. The mist churned like a living thing, parting in momentary glimpses of horror, glimpses of grasping hands, eyeless faces pressed against windows, teeth gnashing silently in the dark. Gabriel bit his tongue until he tasted blood, fighting the instinct to cry out. Ahead, the road narrowed. The town's layout twisted upon itself, streets looping into impossible spirals, houses merging with one another like melting wax. The very reality of the place frayed and buckled under the hunger's rising strength. Gabriel knew he was close. The fountain. The mouth. He pressed forward, boots slipping on slick cobblestones. As he rounded a broken archway, a figure stepped into his path. A woman, her back to him, long black hair matted with dirt, a tattered white dress stained with dark handprints. Gabriel froze. The woman stood perfectly still. Then slowly, painfully, she turned her head to look at him. Her face was
wrong, stretched, grinning impossibly wide.
Empty eyes like twin pits of night. Her mouth opened. No sound came out, but Gabriel heard it anyway, inside his skull. "Speak to me!" Pain exploded behind his eyes. His knees buckled. The stone in his pocket flared hot, sending out a shockwave of
invisible force. The woman shrieked silently, stumbling back, her body flickering like a bad signal. Gabriel didn't hesitate.
He ran. The road narrowed further, crumbling into rough-hewn stone steps that spiraled downward. Mist and ruin swallowed the world above. He descended into darkness. Each step throbbed underfoot, as if he walked upon the creature's own flesh. The spiral tightened. Reality warped. Walls pressed inward. Time unraveled. At one point, Gabriel glimpsed himself ahead, another version of him, climbing the steps backward, blood streaming from his ears. He squeezed his eyes shut and kept moving. Do
not think.
Do not listen. Do not speak. Finally, after what felt like hours or seconds, he emerged into the square once more. The fountain stood at its center, an altar of cracked stone and black moss. Above it, the mouth hung. Not merely a portal or a wound, but a living, breathing abyss. The mist poured from it in thick tendrils. Eyes and mouths swam within its depths, shifting and merging endlessly. As Gabriel watched, the last remnants of the townspeople, those who had knelt in prayer, rose into the air, pulled screaming into the mouth's waiting darkness. There, bodies unraveled like thread. Gabriel staggered forward. The stone blazed in his pocket. He drew it forth, holding it aloft like a torch against the endless night. The mouth shuddered, recoiling slightly. For the first time, Gabriel dared hope. There, around the base of the fountain, were grooves etched into the cobblestones, the same symbols from the librarian's book. Worn nearly smooth by time, but still there. A ritual circle, a binding. If he could reignite it, he could seal the mouth. Gabriel fell to his knees, tracing the ancient symbols with trembling fingers. His touch left trails of light in the stone, as if awakening long-dormant magic. The mouth roared, not with sound but with pure psychic violence. Tendrils lashed out. Gabriel barely dodged one, feeling the air sizzle where it passed. Another stroke, and the stone was knocked from his grasp. It skittered across the square. Gabriel lunged after it, but a tendril smashed into the ground before him, sending him sprawling. The stone lay just out of reach, and the mouth descended. Closer, hungrier, a gaping oblivion filled with ancient malice. Gabriel's mind screamed. He wanted to beg for help, to call for mercy, but he remembered the librarian's warning. No words.
No cries, not even in your mind. He clenched his teeth until they cracked, forcing himself into silence. A tendril wrapped around his ankle, dragging him toward the abyss. Gabriel kicked wildly, scrabbling against the ground. His fingertips brushed.
The stone. Another inch, the creature's pull strengthened. Gabriel screamed silently, muscles tearing. And then he closed his fingers around the stone. It flared to life. A blast of energy exploded outward, shredding the mist, knocking the tendrils back. Gabriel rolled onto his back, clutching the stone to his chest. The binding circle ignited fully, lines of burning light tracing their way outward from him, racing around the fountain. The mouth howled, not a sound but a feeling that rattled Gabriel's very soul. The circle tightened, the tendrils writhed, the ground split and groaned, and slowly,
agonizingly, the mouth began to shrink, fighting every inch. Gabriel poured everything he had into the stone, feeling it drain him, his strength, his memories, his very self. The mouth thrashed, but the circle held. Finally, with a shudder that rocked the town to its foundations, the mouth collapsed inward, folding into itself, smaller and smaller, until it vanished with a final pulse of blinding light. Silence fell. True silence. Gabriel lay on the cold stones, unable to move. The mist
dissipated slowly, revealing the broken, empty town. The sky above was clear for the first time. Stars glittered coldly overhead. He had done it. He had sealed the hunger once more, at least for now. But at what cost? Gabriel closed his eyes, and for the first time since entering the silent
town, he allowed himself a single broken whisper, a prayer to the empty night. Let me go home.
Morning came, but it brought no warmth. Gabriel stood at the edge of the silent town, looking down the cracked asphalt road that wound out between the hills. The mist had lifted, and yet the silence remained, thick and unnatural. He had slept, briefly beneath the broken awning of a general store, clutching the binding stone until it cooled in his hands like dead coal. Now it was nothing more than smooth grey rock, its symbols faded, its power spent. The hunger was gone. The mouth sealed, but the town still watched. From behind dark windows, from the cracks in the earth, from the very silence that clung to Gabriel like a shroud, he turned his back on it and started walking. No signs pointed the way. No markers told him how far until the next place that remembered sound. He walked. The road stretched on, desolate and endless. Forests loomed on either side, the trees leaning too close, their branches twitching in windless air. No birds, no insects, not even the rustle of leaves. Hours passed. His legs ached, his throat itched with thirst. Still he walked. Sometimes he looked back. The town was gone. No skyline, no buildings, not even a distant haze. It had swallowed itself, erased from the world. Gabriel pressed forward until the road became dirt, and the dirt became trail. The sun arced overhead, golden and cold. Shadows lengthened. Then, footsteps. He froze. They were not his own. They came from behind, slow, steady, measured. Gabriel turned, heart pounding. No one was there. He waited. The silence stretched. He walked again. The footsteps resumed, exactly one beat behind his own. He broke into a jog. They matched him. He stopped. So, did they? Panic surged. He turned off the trail, crashing into the underbrush, heart thundering. Branches clawed at him. Roots tangled his feet. He tripped, hit the ground hard, rolled over and saw it, a shadow, upright, standing just beyond the trees, tall, thin, its edges blurred like smoke. It had no face, but it wore a shape he knew, his own. Gabriel scrambled back. The figure stepped forward, but made no sound. Its feet never touched the ground. It raised a hand. In its palm, a second binding stone, but this one was black. It pulsed, slowly. Gabriel clutched his chest where his own had once burned. The figure tilted its head, and then it opened its mouth. No sound came, but Gabriel heard it. You carried me. You woke me. You thought you sealed me. But you brought me with you? Gabriel screamed. No sound escaped. The world tilted. The forest melted. He was standing once more before the fountain. No, above it, looking down into the spiral where the mouth had been. It was still closed, but cracks
had begun to form. The seal was breaking, not from the outside, from within. Gabriel blinked. He was back in the forest.
On his hands and knees, alone, or so it seemed. The trail stretched ahead. The footsteps were gone, but so was the sky. Above him, only darkness, as if the world had forgotten the sun. Gabriel rose slowly. He walked and walked, but now the silence had shape. Now it breathed behind him. He knew the truth. You could seal the mouth, but the hunger? The hunger never stopped listening. The inn appeared as the sun vanished, if it ever had been shining at all. A crooked sign swung above the door, its paint long faded. The willows rested, stood alone at the edge of a wide clearing, nestled beside a weeping willow tree that twisted, like it mourned something buried beneath its roots. Gabriel hesitated. From inside, light glowed warmly behind lace-draped windows. And, more importantly, he heard something. A voice, muffled, indistinct, but unmistakably sound. He moved to the door and pushed it open. A bell above tinkled softly. Inside, the air was warm and scented with rosemary and wood smoke. A fire crackled in the hearth. The sound of a radio played from behind the counter, low and full of static, but undeniably human. It felt normal. For the first time in days, Gabriel felt his shoulders relax. A middle-aged woman stepped into view from the back room. She wore a cozy cardigan and thick glasses, her grey hair pinned back in a neat bun. She smiled, gentle and warm. "Well," she said, her voice honeyed, "you look like hell." Gabriel laughed, though it came out hoarse and raw. "I feel worse." "Come."
"In. Sit. There's stew on." He followed her to a round table near the fire and sank into a chair. The warmth seeped into his bones.
The sound of the radio, so mundane, nearly brought him to tears. He looked at her. "This place isn't silent?" She chuckled. "No, dear, not here. You must have come from the north." Gabriel blinked. "Yes," she nodded. "That whole
stretch of land. Cursed. Been that way a long time. People go quiet there or they don't come back at all." She ladled stew into a chipped ceramic bowl and placed it in front of him. He stared at it, the scent making his stomach twist with hunger. He ate slowly, spoon trembling in his hand. "You're lucky," she said, sitting across from him.
"Most who speak up there don't make it out." Gabriel lowered his spoon. "I sealed it," he said softly. "The mouth. It's closed now." The woman's smile didn't change, but her eyes did. They darkened, just slightly. "I see." The radio sputtered, static rising. Gabriel looked toward it. It flickered between stations, snippets of speech, then whispers, then silence, then Gabriel. He froze. The woman watched him closely now. The fire dimmed. Outside, the wind rose, moaning softly through the willow. Gabriel stood. "What is this place?" She rose with him. "A resting spot, that's all. A little haven between silences." He backed away from the table. The stew tasted like ash in his mouth. The radio crackled again. "You carried me! You woke me! You speak!" I listened. The voice wasn't hers. It was his own, twisted. Gabriel turned to run, but the door was gone. Just wall. No windows now either. Only wood, dark, warping. The fire was out. The woman sighed, stepping toward him. "You brought it with you," she said softly. "Didn't you understand? You can't seal a thing that lives inside you." Gabriel screamed, but nothing came out. He reached into his coat, grabbing the dead stone. It pulsed once, faint and cold, a mockery of protection. The woman faded, her skin peeling into mist, her form unraveling. So did the room. So did the world. Everything broke apart, falling into spirals of ink and ash. Gabriel stood alone, suspended in blackness. Then steps from the void ahead. A figure emerged, himself again, but older, hollow-eyed, mouth sewn shut. It held the black stone. It raised it slowly, and Gabriel saw what it meant. The seal had not held. It had turned inward. He had not escaped the town. He was the town. Gabriel stood in the dark. Not a darkness of shadow, but one of unbeing. A place where light had never existed and language had no shape. He was not alone. Figures moved around him, flickers of people once known, once loved. The librarian, the
villagers, the shadow with his face, even the woman from the inn, all silent, all watching. And then a voice, not external, but buried within his mind. Words are doors, Gabriel. You open too many. He clutched his head. The black stone pulsed in.
The distance, floating in the air like a rotten sun. From it spilled letters, words, names, drifting slowly, sinking into the void. Each one fell with weight. Gabriel tried to remember something. His mother's voice, the name of a town, the scent of books. But each time, the memory slid away. Like water off glass, he was being unmade, piece by piece. A single word echoed in the emptiness. Silence. Then again, silence. But now it meant something else. Not absence, but power. Not void, but prison. Words had awakened the mouth. Memory fed it. To destroy it, he had to go further than any seal or symbol could reach. He had to forget everything. He knelt. The black stone hovered before him, now cracked, bleeding smoke. It offered him a choice. Keep his identity and carry the hunger with him until it consumed the world, or erase the words, all of them. His name, his life, his self, become silence. His fingers hovered over the stone, images flared, his childhood, a lost love, the mountains, the librarian's shaking hands. They ached, they were beautiful, and they were poison. Gabriel pressed his palm to the stone. White light, agony, not pain of body, but of soul. Every word within him tore loose. Every story, every song, every scream, they poured out. He wept, but no tears came. And when the last word vanished, so did he. When the sun rose over the valley, there was no town, only a field, green and quiet. A traveler passed weeks later and saw nothing but an old willow tree, its limbs swaying gently. He paused, frowning. He thought he heard something soft and sorrowful, like wind through broken reeds. But then it was gone, and the road stretched on. Years passed. The valley where the silent town once stood became a nature preserve. Travelers, when asked, said there was something calming about the place, peaceful, serene. No animals made their homes there, but the grass grew tall and golden, and wildflowers painted the hills in spring. People picnicked beneath the willow tree, unaware of the altar buried beneath its roots. Sometimes children played games among the stones that poked up from the earth, remnants of a fountain long since, collapsed and forgotten. They whispered into them, laughing, pretending the stones whispered back. They didn't, not yet. But something listened. Always something listened. In a small library 2 towns over, a girl named Anna found an old notebook tucked behind a row of disused encyclopedias. It had no title, just cracked leather and a symbol burned into its cover, a circle crossed by a single vertical line. She opened it. Inside, pages and pages of scrawled words, half legible, frantic, like someone trying to remember a dream before it vanished. The name Gabriel appeared again and again, often scratched out or overwritten with other names. or with silence. She felt something stir as she read, something she didn't have a word for. That night, she dreamed of stone steps spiraling downward into blackness. She stood before a great mouth, stitched shut with barbed wire. It whispered, without sound, and she understood every word. When she woke, she could still feel the echo of it behind her teeth. Elsewhere, a man sat on a bench beside a quiet lake, sketching in a pad. He had no memory of who he was or where he came from. The name Gabriel meant nothing to him, but sometimes when he looked at the willow tree across the water, his hand trembled, and his pencil drew spirals without his consent. He didn't speak. Couldn't, perhaps, but he felt peace in that silence. Until one day, a stranger sat beside him, a girl with a notebook. She said hello. He said nothing. She showed him the symbol, and something inside him cracked, just slightly. The mouth is gone, but it is not dead. Because what is language if not a virus? And what is memory but a door? It waits behind every unspoken word, in every half-remembered name, in the hush before a scream. The silent town is gone, but the new silence is spreading, soft, patient, inevitable. It doesn't come with thunder or
blood. It comes with forgetfulness, with absence, and if you listen closely, you'll hear it. Or worse, you won't.